and welcome to the Abundant Self Podcast, a podcast where we talk about everything there is to learn and to know about what it truly means to have life and life in abundance. My name is Chebaibai, and thank you so much for tuning in. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time it is that you're tuning in to today's episode. I hope you are well and staying safe wherever it is that you are. If this is your very first time here, my good name is Chebaibai, and welcome to the Abundant Self Podcast. As you may have noticed, this is a bonus episode, and what that means is that it is quite different from the other bi-weekly episodes that we usually have here on the podcast. And yes, that means we have different information, a different message altogether. Not exactly. Not so different. And I wanted to come on here and to talk to you guys more about Chebaibai's pen. So, as you already know, storytelling is something that we are big on here on the podcast. And essentially, usually in each and every episode, we have tried to use the art of storytelling to bring out each and every message, or rather each and every topical issue that we are covering in that particular episode. And if you have listened to the very first episode of the podcast, that is where I am sharing about my story and even how I decided to start the podcast, you already know that this whole idea started from the blog, that is Chebaibai's pen. And what we have been doing there is that we have been sharing the stories of men and women who are doing great things in the society, great things in the community, and who are essentially living the most abundant version of themselves. If you haven't listened to that episode, well, don't be afraid, or rather feel free to just press pause and go back and listen to episode 1. That is welcome to the Abundant Self Podcast. But other than that, so that is essentially what we have been doing on the blog. It started out as just a storytelling blog where what we were doing is just telling short stories, poems, fictional stories. But later on, we decided to, evolve, and we started talking about issues around mental health, things like imposter syndrome, depression, burnout, things like that. But then I realized that there were people around me who were doing absolutely great things that, people needed to know about. And even on today's, or rather on the latest blog post, we are going to be talking, or rather sharing the story of one such person. And even as I was writing this blog post, I remember saying how every time we are asked to think about the most inspiring people that we can think of, or the people who inspire us or who are our mentors, it's easy for us to quote names like Michelle Obama, Nelson Mandela, whoever it is. And not to say that these people are not influential in their own right and in their own spaces. What we are trying to say is that most of the time it is easy for us to start mentioning names of people who, maybe are from another country, or people who are already known worldwide, that we forget that we have people around us, our friends, our relatives, our colleagues, classmates, you name it, people who are also doing great things. And even though, yes, they haven't attained, that level of being known by every single person in the world, they still have a story that is inspiring, and a story that is meant to encourage us to keep on, dreaming big dreams and even going ahead to pursue these dreams, because, none of us is limited. Each and every one of us has everything that we need in order for us to achieve that which we set our minds and our hearts to achieve. Yes, so already on the blog, we have covered stories of one Joshua Nyantika, who is a good friend of mine here in Kenya. And when we covered his story, we were talking about how to transform your passion into a business. So if you go to the blog, you'll see that Joshua transformed his passion for photography into a business. And what he did is that he developed a platform, a digital sharing platform, where he empowers photographers to earn a living from their income. We also have a story on Serafina Nyawera, who is a social media manager. And, we were just talking about how she decided to quit her job and pursue what she loved and, started running a business online. I mean, purely online and on social media. So she's now currently running a company called the Social Media Mogul. And what she does is that she empowers fellow social media managers, and she's also a social media manager herself, among other things that she's doing in the content marketing space. So be sure to go right ahead and read her story. Then we also shared an interesting story on another good friend of mine. We went to school together. Her name is Janami Abing, and she started an initiative called You Make Today Better Initiative. And that initiative was born essentially to create awareness on suicide. And especially this being the month of September, where, we usually take the time to just create awareness on suicide and to just encourage people. Her entire message is that you make today better, and for that reason you need to find meaning in today's life. You need to find meaning in what you do today and who you are and the kind of impact and the kind of contribution that you make to society. And for that, there's always a reason to live. There's always a reason. There's always a means, or rather we can always find a way or a reason in which we need to live. So anyway, you can also go ahead and check out her story, and I'm going to be mentioning this particular blog post in the next in the episode coming up, where we are going to be talking about how to stay hopeful when everything is hopeless. Being the month of September, and now that we are creating awareness on issues suicide, it is important that we learn, or that we know how it is that we can find hope, or that we can lean on hope even when things look hopeless. So you can go ahead and check out her story on the blog. And on the latest blog post, that is on Chebaibai Pen, we are going to be talking about Lillian Mully. Lillian Mully is a communications professional or expert, just like myself. And when I met her, I think that is something that also drew me to her, because we were of the same professional background, and at the time she was helping to do a bit of social media management and communications management for AYLF, that is Africa Youth Leadership Forum, an organization where both of us volunteer. But on the side, Lillian Mully is a founder of Hidden Tears Kenya, and this is a non-governmental organization that is doing absolutely great things here in Kenya. They're helping to tell the stories of men and women who are just finding hope, who are finding encouragement, and who are also essentially finding meaning and purpose in life. Her story is inspirational. Her story is one that will also motivate you to go after that which sets your soul on fire. Of course, I do not want to talk too much about the blog post here on this episode. Mine was just to encourage you to go and check out the blog. That is Chebaibai Pen. You can just type it out on your Google browser, Chebaibai Pen, and you will be led directly to the website. But fear not, I have also left a link of the website here on the show notes, so be sure to check that out. And of course, if you like what you read, and if you relate rather to the stories that we are telling on the blog, be sure to leave a comment, be sure to give us your feedback, and even Also, if you yourself would like to be featured on the blog, if you have a story that you'd like to share to the world, then we also have a form on the blog post that is going to help you, tell us more about who you are and, what story do you want to tell, and we will make it happen. Again, fear not, I have left the link to that Google form right here on the show notes, so be sure to check it out. And if you haven't listened to our previous episode, and go right ahead and listen to them and tell us what you think. If you remember nothing else from today's episode, I hope you remember that you have been called to have life and life in abundance, and that I am rooting for you always. Cheers, guys. There you have it. This has been the Abundant Self Podcast with me, Sharon Chebaibai. If this episode has been helpful to you, feel free to share it with your friends and family. We'd also love to hear from you. If you have any feedback or questions relating to today's episode, then go ahead and leave us a voice message on the hotline number in the show notes. Feel free to also rate and review us from wherever you get your podcasts. If you remember nothing else from today's episode, I hope you remember that you have been called to have life and life in abundance, and that I am rooting for you always.